Today I want to talk about projects. Projects is something that I do a lot, and it's something that's really important to me, but it's something that I struggle to get done. So while I try to get this project done, I will also be working on this Lego set that was gifted to me for a recent birthday that I still haven't gotten to. But I think it's quite fitting to work on it while I talk about not finishing project. Also, if you know me well, this is a Ford Model T, I think. If you know me well, I do love historically interesting things. I don't really care for automobiles as much, but an old automobile is still cool. Let's get this guy open. So I started this year with the intent to work on a lot of projects. Look at this booklet. Look at this. It's massive. I wonder if I'll even be able to finish this in one sitting. So I started this year with the intent to work on several main projects. By the way, what a project may mean to me, it might be different for you. A project for me is like any ongoing task that you get some personal fulfillment out of, right? So a project is not a chore, right? Like cleaning your room is not a project, or doing the dishes is not a project. But for example, I've talked about it, I think, on this channel before. I paint and build miniatures and miniature soldiers, right? And those are an ongoing project, right? Those are things that I may spend like a month to 2 months working on per like set. But I also consider these YouTube videos that I work on as also projects, because you only see the end result. I don't fall into this category, but if you're watching a YouTuber routinely and they're putting out content on a fairly routine basis, it may seem like something that just like happens fairly regularly and is like not too much thought is put into it. But almost every YouTuber I've known or worked on, or any content creator, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes for every video, right? Like getting in front of the mic as I'm doing, or in front of the camera as I'm doing now, is only one part of it. After, in this goes a lot of preparation of like, what am I going to talk about? For these kind of videos, it's more simple. But then there's a lot of post editing that goes into it. So I do consider each one of these a project. And if you follow me on my main channel, where I tend to talk about more about like technical topics, those videos take a while. They're actually quite comparable to like painting a set of miniatures. They take me usually about a month to a month and a half to complete. And that's because this is not my full-time job. I have a full-time job, and this is just something I do for fun. All this is to say is that I started this year with the intended purpose or intended goal of getting through some big projects, as well as reaching some goals on some long-running projects. One of those goals was to reach, I think, 5,000 subscribers on my main channel, and I've only hit I think I'm like almost at 3,000. So considering that we're halfway through the year, we're not doing too well. I guess I have 6 months. But it's actually surprisingly hard to build these things and narrate. I didn't think about it, but I guess like building Legos is a semi-active process, or at least finding the things that I need to assemble is a semi-active process. One of the challenges that I run into with projects is the last mile. And that's really what I want to talk about in this video. The last mile of a project always seems to be the hardest. Starting a new project is really easy. And this is something that I think I fall victim to a lot, is that I start a lot of new projects and then I don't end up finishing them, or they get like put on pause somewhere in the middle. But I find that like a lot of the projects I start and struggle to really complete kind of end off in the last like 90% done area, right? Meaning like when it comes to a video like this one, that might mean the writing is done. Maybe I've even filmed it. I've edited a lot of it, but there's just like the last like detail touches that I don't want to get through, right? This is even like more obvious with like miniature painting, right? Like I'll get to a point where I've done 90% of the miniature, but it's like missing certain details. Like I haven't painted the eyes or something like that. And it just like sits on my desk for weeks. With little hobbies like that, it's like whatever. And there are things where I've reached the 90% mark. I'm like, you know what? I am gonna call it done there. But I think part of the struggle with finishing projects at the 90% done mark is, for the last 10%, it's actually very ambiguous what done means, right? Like how do you truly call a creative project complete? With something like So I'm an engineer in my free time, or sorry, I'm an engineer in my professional life. Something is considered done when it goes out to the customer. That's like a very easy measurement of a complete project. Defining that in engineering is its own mess. Like what are the things that we look for in a done project? That is its own thing, but it's a bit easier. The requirements are more discrete. With creative pursuits, it's a bit trickier, right? Because you can get a project, or you can get a video, or you can get an art piece, or you can get anything really done to this. You can get it to this state where it looks good enough, you know, like the only person that is like unhappy with it is you. But in reality, if you show it to most people, like most people may not even recognize the difference between the 90% done and the 100% done. This is really true with videos, right? So like one thing that I like constantly battle with at the 90% state with videos is getting like the timing of music correct, right? Is, you know, you want to get it lined up with certain cuts. You want to make sure it like is modulating in and out during narration, like, and those are like very small minutiae that a viewer may pick up on. It won't really make or break the video for them, right? Unless it's like glaringly a bad audio edit, like the sound is just like too loud or something like that. And it's those kind of things that I find I can get lost in for like weeks before I either give up or I say like, you know, this is good enough. So there are several things that I've started to do to try to improve my project management and my ability to also complete my project. Probably first and foremost is just being more organized. Previously, the way I was managing my projects was completely in my brain, which is insane, first of all. Well, I guess it's fine if you're like managing, if you just have like one hobby, right? If you have one thing that you're working on, then you don't need to manage it. It's just whatever. But I typically am bouncing between like 3 different projects, right? And they're usually like a blog I'm working on, a video I'm working on, and then, as I mentioned, I paint my little guys over there. So the painting is another one. And those are just my active projects, right? I frequently have a lot of ideas for other projects I want to pursue, right? Based on conversations I've had, or things that are kind of started but are not active. So for example, I am frequently, a lot of my blogs or video ideas, they're actually ongoing research projects, right? So I may start them, right? But they may involve like talking with certain people, scheduling certain interviews. And while I wait on those, I can't work on them, right? A lot of these projects, you know, they ended up just like filling up my mind. So as I said, the first thing I started doing was just being more organized. And being more organized to me meant like getting one of those, I hate that I'm saying this, but like, what do they call them actually? There's like an industry term for them that I'm blanking on, but it's kind of like Jira. But like I got one of these tracker boards where I can see where I can record the state of my project. And I really keep these projects in 3 simple states. Either the project has not been started, it's in progress, or it's complete. And I can move these projects like down the pipeline as I make progress on them. This is surprisingly difficult to do while talking. This is a good reminder. Streaming is a skill. I'm not streaming right now, but like doing this live would be even worse because I'd have to be like reading comments. There's a degree of multitasking in today's entertainment industry that is just like beyond my capabilities. First exterior panel on this car. The other thing that tracking projects has helped me do is also better track the projects I want to do in the future. So previously what I would do, and this was really bad for my mental state, is like I would think of a project I would work on, right? Maybe there's a new article I want to write, and I would just hold the premise of that article in my head, and it would just like take up unnecessary space in my brain, and I would think about this project. I would mentally tell myself also to remember that project. Like I would say like, don't forget this. You came up with this idea and remember it. And then sometimes I'd be sitting in the subway and I'd be thinking to myself, what was that thing that I told myself to remember? And then I would re-remember it, and it was just like, it was so precarious, right? So one of the things these tracking boards have helped me do is better also just remember other projects. But they've also helped me catch a like foil in my project designing, or whatever you want to call it, like project planning patterns, right? It's taking even a bigger step back. Like one of the things I have started to do is try to track my own patterns and behaviors. I think like we oftentimes just kind of do things and we don't realize that we ourselves are like creatures of pattern, right? We have habits, we have behaviors, and these stem into like how do we react to things, when throughout the year do we change our mind on things. Like one thing I've started to realize is that like around the summertime, if I had plans for the year, like resolutions, around the summertime is when those resolutions start to kind of like implode on themselves, right? It's mostly because like the summer is the time when, I think the summer and the winter is when routines start to get interfered with, right? So if throughout the year you had a routine that you followed, around summertime you start taking more vacations, more breaks, and a routine can easily fall apart after that. Same thing with the winter, right? You get all those holidays, and then after you get off of Christmas and New Year's, you're like, what was I doing every day before then, right? So what I've been trying to track these patterns, and one of the habits I've realized is when I come up with a project, this is especially true for articles and sometimes videos, I'll do this thing, I call it like headline or title driven design. And this is where like the entire premise for an article or video comes from like one thought, right? Like maybe you're like, oh, this is a real gotcha statement, right? Or this is a real quip. And that entire thought or sentence will drive like your project or the idea for your project. And then when I go and sit down and actually start like writing out the project or designing it or thinking about it, I'm like, wait, this is dumb. Or I find research that like immediately refutes my argument or perspective, and I just don't, I end up not doing it. So the tracking of projects has helped with that quite a bit. So all of that has helped me like be more organized with projects, but it hasn't necessarily addressed the 90% stuck problem, right? Like I still, I might still make progress, but I get to like the 90% done state. I'm like, am I done? Do I want to keep working on this? And I've picked up another trick on how to get over that hump. One of the reasons I think I get stuck at the 90% part of a project is actually due to a bit of anxiety or nervousness, right? You may be this is especially true if you're like a bit of a perfectionist with your projects, which if you watch my videos and stuff, you probably don't think I am. But that's because of this trick that I've started to use. And that is like recognizing putting everything in proportion. I think especially creators or people in arts or stuff like this, they tend to get into their head about like how perfect something has to be, right? Like, let's say I'm writing one of my articles. I'm like, oh, I need to make sure everything is like super cited, super factually correct. Like, I can't have anyone be able to create an argument about what I'm writing. But then you take like a step back and you realize you're just like publishing on the internet, right? Like you are just adding to this universe of digital content, which like most of the world will never watch or even see, and is completely controlled by these algorithmic waves and tides that you don't have control over, and you don't know who's going to see it, which awful person or which great person is going to see it. And you can't accommodate every one of those like situations and people. I guess this is kind of like the same advice that people give when they say, think of who your audience is, right? So like whenever you're making a piece of, I think like writing or video, you should think about like who is the target audience, right? This is another thing that I've been learning recently. Ultimately, most of your target audience is just like random people on the internet. So like it's important that you're, anything you're putting out on the internet, this isn't for like, I don't know, some festival, right? It's probably not for some festival, like a video festival, right? You're not publishing for an academic journal, right? It's okay if some things are imperfect. It's okay if you don't get every statement 100% right and everything is 100% cited. That is assuming you're like not worried about a defamation lawsuit. Like if you're making claims against a person, you should probably cite where you're getting those claims from. Let's see, I need a 3-piece. But for the most part, like nothing you're putting on the internet is like super consequential. This is another tangent, but I think like something my generation fell for is believing that like everything that you put on the internet is like important and is the start of some like political revolution. But the reality is that like nothing, I don't really think anything important is triggered on the internet anymore. Anything that's of consequence happens in the real world now. I'm sorry to say, but like the internet has become this is such a tangential topic, but the internet has become such like a curated echo chamber for who you are as a person that it's not like most of your thoughts, this conversation will probably never reach someone who doesn't give a rat's ass about like organization or project management. This is going to hit a bunch of people who are like, I don't know, kind of like me, right? Like they're working on projects, they're trying to stay organized, and sometimes they don't succeed and they're looking for like advice. But this is never gonna hit the person who's like deeply unorganized. This is all to say that I don't think it's super important to take everything you put on the internet very seriously. It's important to remember that everything I just described is for like a specific set of projects. If you're publishing, if you're like working on a dissertation for a PhD, you probably should not heed this advice. You should just ignore the last 5 minutes. But that being said, like this has helped me get over that like 90% hump, because a lot of times I'm just like anxious about releasing something when I really shouldn't be anxious. And I remind myself like, oh, you know, it's fine to get some things wrong. And in fact, I hate to say this, but getting things wrong is actually kind of rewarded by most algorithms because it drives engagement. Like people are more likely to tell you you're wrong if they think you're wrong or if you really are wrong, and that drives engagement, which is usually good for most distribution platforms. Oh my goodness, I got both sides of this cars thing done. Did I mess this up completely? JK, I just didn't finish it. So getting over that anxiety, that helps for things that you're posting publicly. I also have a lot of projects that I don't ever share with people. Like I actually don't, like a lot of the miniatures that I keep alluding to, I don't really share those on the internet. I share them with my friends and like close family that cares about it, but those are really for me. But even those kind of projects still get stuck at that 90% mark. Like I oftentimes do still find myself struggling to finish those last several strokes or details. Part of that is just recognizing that you're stalling. It really is about, the answer to everything is organization, but seriously, the answer here is like, you just dedicate yourself like a certain time interval and you say, I'm gonna finish in this interval, right? So if I'm working on a piece, I will say, okay, I have 2 hours. Whatever we get done in the next 2 hours is what we get done. And that will be considered done. I will work through those 2 hours, and whatever I get done in those 2 hours is what I get done. And if I am truly happy with the finished product at that point, I just call it done and I move on with my life. Sometimes I'm not, and I take another 2-hour chunk. But the point is like really forcing yourself to get over that final hump. I think it's gonna take way longer than this video to finish this car, which is ironic given the topic. But I hope this was a bit useful for you. I hope this helped you think about how you can get your projects across the finish line. Let me know in the comments what techniques you use to finish your projects. And yeah, remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Toodles.